Hey, welcome to the Hell Has an Exit podcast. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 833-999-1877 to speak to a specialist. The show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com. Hey, welcome to Hell Has an Exit. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. On this show, I interview a lot of recovering addicts, people who have stories of redemption, overcoming struggles and adversity, and people who have found the exit of hell. Today, I have a good friend of mine, Brad. I've known you basically since I've been clean. I really got close to you when Kenny was sponsoring me. You know, rest in peace, Kenny. You know, he helped me out tremendously. You know, I remember going to his house and you guys were cooking swordfish and just hearing like the stories about like you and him talking about like Vietnam. I remember he was saying that his wife would wake him up with the lights because if they woke him up, they would turn on and off the lights to wake him up because then if not, he would start having flashbacks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember like just hearing your guys' stories and just being like in awe of that.
Yeah. When I first got clean, I'd go to the beach. Everybody go to the beach, and sometimes there'd be helicopters going by over the beach, and I'd jump out of my chair or out of the sand wherever I was sitting, just jump out. Yeah.
Because
I was, I heard the chopping noise, and it got me nervous. Yeah, that was a long time ago.
So, where's your story start?
You know, it's funny. I believe that my story really started before I ever picked up a drug. Mm-hmm. I guess I came from a household it was dysfunctional. My parents were always fighting and everything, and they were always fighting. And my father, I think, took a lot of his own shit that he was going through, whether it was work or whether it was with my mother or whether it was family, whatever it was, he took a lot of that stuff out on me, and he was very abusive to me. You know, I can remember playing with my father when I was a young kid. I'd play catch with him. Some kids say their father was their the person they looked up to, their idol.
Like their hero, yeah.
Their hero. My hero was Willie Mays.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard of Willie Mays, but my hero.
I started collecting baseball cards, so I have a couple of his cards.
So my hero was Willie Mays. So when I was a little kid, that was my hero. And, and my father really didn't get to play with us once. I could tell you a little story. My father took me out to play, and, we played catch, and I threw the ball over his head. And he took me in the house. He put me in my room. He hit me. He said, "Stay in your room now." And then he'd come back an hour later or something. And he says, I only do that because I love you. So I was pretty confused as a young kid. Mm-hmm. In school, I was always pretty much a standout. My mother used to go to school all the time and find out that he has so much potential. His behavior is not good. What's the
disruptive?
Yeah. So I had disruptive behavior. I would get in trouble. I would talk out. I might have cursed a teacher here and there. So I was always in trouble before. I'm going to tell you a little story how I remember my father would be at his desk and he'd be sipping beer or something, and he'd let me sip the head off the beer, and I said, but I don't look at that as that where I really started, I told you how my father didn't really play with me much. Well, he used to go, it's a funny thing because I used to go to friends' houses and I'd see how their fathers would participate with them and everything, and I used to cry to myself because I said, my dad wasn't like that. He just wasn't like that. My dad was kind of what you call a functioning alcoholic. He started drinking at noon and he stopped when he went to bed. He had an ashtray full of cigarettes that was like a mountain. He'd be smoking one would be burning. So my father had the disease. So anyway, I would go to my friend's house. Their fathers would be making them model airplanes together with them and everything. So I said, something? I got to get me a model airplane or a model car. So I went and got a model car, and I got caught stealing it. So the guy, it was in Woolworths in New York, and the guy brings me to the counter. He says, "You stay right here," and he's holding on to me, and he's got the model airplane. I don't know if it was a car or airplane, but he's got it there. And he says, "Give me the number, your phone number." I give him a phony number. So while he's dialing the phone, I grab the airplane, and I ran out of the
took off.
store, and I took off, and I felt pretty good, like I got away with a crime here or
Yeah.
something.
And you got the merchandise.
And I got the merchandise. So I went home. I went up in the attic. We lived in a house with an unfinished attic. And I went up in the attic, and I opened up the model airplane, and there was this tube of glue inside. So I took that tube of glue out, and I smelled it. And I smelled it again, and I never built that model airplane.
Wow.
I started sniffing glue.
So no one even told you to sniff it?
No, I didn't know anything
Yeah.
about that. I didn't know anything about that. And then I started sniffing glue.
Wow.
So then I started buying glue in the store. Now I'm 10 years old, maybe, I don't know. But I was definitely in something like the second or third grade. I'm not sure what it was because I know where I lived. So I started sniffing the glue, and then I was doing it by myself, and we moved to another neighborhood in Queens, and we went to the other neighborhood. I went to a new school. It was like I'm going to start all over again. Neighbors aren't going to hear my father yelling and screaming, because we always moved because he was always yelling and screaming, and the neighbors were complaining.
What part of New York were you living in?
Well, I'm pretty much from Queens.
Okay.
So I was living in Flushing at the time, and I think we moved to Bayside when I was about maybe 10 years old, 11 years old. So I was 10, 11 years old, I might have put the glue down for a minute or two. I always liked playing ball, and I was always in the schoolyard. After school, I didn't go home. I would go in the schoolyard, and when all the other kids were starting to go home to eat, I never went home because I was always scared to go home because of my father. I always had a fear about my father. So I was a pretty good athlete, and but my lifestyle got in the way of that pretty good, and I went from the schoolyard to the corner luncheonette, and I'm sniffing glue, and I'm meeting people here, and, I must have really sniffed a lot of glue from the time I was 11 until I was 16 years old.
That's so crazy.
Because when I went to junior high school, I met other guys, and they
That were
sniffed
sniffing glue too?
So I sniffed with them. We used to go down the basements. We'd sniff glue. It was a nice buzz, I thought. I mean, whoever realized I knew I was doing the wrong thing, it's not something.
But it was like harmless.
Wasn't trying to hurt anybody at the time or anything like that. But so that went on for quite a while. And like I said, I'd go from the schoolyard to the corner luncheonette. And the older guys were at the corner luncheonette. So I wanted to be like the older guys. So before you know it, I'm coming up on 16 years old. One of my buddies that I hang out with, we used to steal cars together. Used to steal cars to go to find where they sold glue in a case at a time, like a stationery store.
How would you steal them? With like a screwdriver?
The cars?
Yeah.
Well, they were pretty easy back then. What we did was, that's another story. So what we did was, they'd be easy to open up. You'd go in with a screwdriver, open it up. And a lot of these cars back in the 60s, late 50s and 60s, the people would leave them on the on position. They wouldn't shut it off altogether. And if they did, you just stick the screwdriver in and turn it. It was simple to start up. Well, check this out. So I'm 15 years old. We steal this car, me and my friend. I don't even know if he's around today, but maybe he'll hear this. And we're driving along. We're trying to go to buy a case of glue. And all of a sudden, I look behind us, and there's a horn honking. It wound up, we stole a cop's private car.
Oh, man.
All of a sudden, I'm hearing shooting. And back in them days...
The cop was shooting at you?
Yeah, back in them days, they shot first and asked questions later. So I hear this shooting. I open up the door, and I get out and run. I had told my mother earlier I was sleeping over a guy's house, and I'm going to come home. And I came home. I'm running, and I got home. The next day, I go to the candy store where I hang out, the corner luncheonette, and I pick up the newspaper, and there's a story in there. So-and-so was shot 2 inches from his heart. It was like it went through his muscle, and his accomplice got away.
He never snitched on you?
No.
Wow.
But the funny thing about it is the sick part, the disease part, the addiction part, the wanting that attention part. I was telling all my friends I was the accomplice. I says, listen, that was me, I was the guy in the car. Like, wow, that's pretty cool, whatever. So anyway, time went on, and I was hanging around in lunch. And I remember this really simply easy, because it was 1967. You remember that year, right, Brian?
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, 1967. I was sitting in back of the luncheonette. I had my old glue bag. And one of my buddies, who I used to steal with and stuff like that, he comes home from Harlem. Now, Harlem, you might have heard of the places where to cop the heroin.
Yeah.
So he came home from Harlem. He says, come with me. We go down the basement. He says, put your arm out. I put my arm out. He sticks a needle in. He says, I feel it. I said, wow, that's nice. I want to tell you, I went in the corner. I lit up a Marlboro.
Wow. So you went from glue to heroin?
I went from glue to heroin.
Not even marijuana?
Well, I might have tasted a little
bit of
marijuana here and
like
there,
a
but
little alcohol, but it never took.
It was never my thing. I'm going to tell you, that's a funny thing you mentioned that. I'd go with some friends to the woods, you know, they cop a quarter Colt 45 back in the day, you know, and they'd be drinking and I'd be pouring mine out. Because I wanted to be a part of.
Cool, but you don't like the taste of it.
I wanted to be a part of, but I didn't do it. So, you know, so my thing was I went from glue to heroin. That was like my drugs of choices. So in between that time, you know, when I was a kid, when I was 13, 14 years old, I started going, getting arrested, going to children's shelters, you know, places like that. Then I was 16, I wound up in jail. And from the time I was 16 to the time I was like almost 19 years old, I was in and out of jail. I spent about 18 months on Rikers Island. I want to tell you that I went to jail before puberty.
Wow. They mixed the adults and kids back then, right?
Under 21 was kids,
okay.
16 to 21. But there were guys in there at 21, they looked 40, you know? I'm not kidding you. And I went to jail. I'm telling you, I went to jail before puberty, so they're chirping at me and all that stuff, you know? You know, I was a young kid. I looked good. I didn't have no hair on me or nothing, you know? They said, that kid looks good. So one of the guys tells me, he says, you got to do something real quick. I says, what am I going to do? He says, somebody's going to grab you. So he says to me, he says, when you go to the mess hall today, so there's one guy, big black guy, you know, he must have been 6'4", you know. He's chirping, hey, you're going to be my kid, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. So my friend says, listen, when you get to that mess hall, you get that tray filled up and make sure he's in back of you. And once it's filled up, you take that tray and slap it right in his face. And back in the day, they didn't have plastic trays.
They were metal trays.
They were all metal trays.
Wow.
So I did that. We had a fight there, the big guy and me. I went to the Bing. He went to the Bing. I came back to the Tiers. Everybody welcomed me, and they put me on the house gang, and nobody bothered me after that. So that was pretty cool. I lucked out there, you know. But that was, you know, it was a scary situation. I'm not going to tell you I wasn't scared. I didn't have no drugs in my system, you know, and here I am. So anyway, you know, so I was in jail for quite a while, and, you know, I have a younger brother, and my younger brother's 5 years younger than me. So I'm about 18, he's about 13. I'm Jewish. My younger brother was crying to my mother that I'm not going to be at the bar mitzvah. My mother, I had all my cases. I was already convicted, getting ready for sentencing to go back. But I still had bail if they wanted to bail me. So one day I hear a little sound, and they said, Morrison, pack it up. You're going home. And I said, Jesus. So I got out. I got home. And I was, you know, clean at the time. I'm not using anything. I'm in jail. I wasn't using anything at the time. So when I got home, you know, the bar mitzvah was coming up, and I'm watching TV, and I'm seeing all this stuff going on about Vietnam. Of course, it was in black and white in my house. So I see all this stuff going on about Vietnam, you know, and I says to myself, I'm going to enlist in the Army. I'm going to see if I could do this. But, you know, I had to be a little manipulation here. You know, I got these cases going on. So I go down, I pass the physical, I pass the mental test, I go back to see the recruiter. He says, yeah, everything is great, but you got this one problem. I said, what's that? He says, you got this court case. I said, listen, Sergeant, I said, if you come to court with me, with my lawyer, I think they'll give me a play. And that's what happened.
Wow.
So I copped out to 4 years in the armed forces. So I was always that kid that still liked attention, okay? I still wanted to be recognized. I still wanted you to think I was somebody. So when I got to the Army, I volunteered for everything. I volunteered for airborne, ranger, infantry, the whole 9 yards. I went through all that training.
How old were you when you enlisted?
I was like almost 19.
Okay.
You know, I got everything. They gave me everything. I went through jump school. Now I'm scared when I walk up on a fourth flight. I went to jump school. I went to infantry school. I went to signal school. I got awarded. I was an E4 right after my MOS because I scored high grades. They sent me to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I had volunteered for Vietnam. I had a major resentment. I says, I'm with these guys. They're trying to stay out of Vietnam.
You're trying
And
to
they're
go.
sending them to Vietnam, and they're sending me to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to the 82nd Airborne Division. I said, okay. So I go there. I says, I left school in the 8th grade. I never finished the 8th grade. So I says, let me get my GED, So I go and I'm taking a test for the GED, and there's a sign in the mess hall. It said, re-enlist and go wherever you want and get money. I lit up. It's pretty insane, though. I re-enlisted for 10 years. 10
Wow.
years. Now, you talk about living just for today. I was living just for today back then. I wasn't thinking of the 10 years. I re-enlisted for 10 years to go to Vietnam, and they gave me $10,000.
Up front?
Well, after the enlistment.
Uh-huh.
This is like 1970s.
Yeah.
They gave me $10,000. I bought a car, like a cheap car, for $600-700. It took me till I was that 19 to get my license. So I bought a car, and I drove home, had my money and everything. I blew everything. I got loaded. I didn't even have enough money for the plane fare. My mother had to pay for the plane fare for me to go to Seattle so I can go to Vietnam. I had my 30 days leave.
Wow.
And I go to Seattle, and I fly to Vietnam.
And you went there with the dope habit?
I didn't really have a habit.
But you were just using.
I was using pretty good. I didn't really have a habit then, I'll tell you when I did have a habit, though. So anyway, I had a lot of habits when I went in and out of jail. That was that. They didn't give you nothing to kick back then. I go to Vietnam. I get off the plane, and it was the longest plane ride I ever been on in my life. It's 24 hours, and you're not sitting in nice seats. You're
They're
sitting.
little seats.
Yeah. So I get to Vietnam, and I get off the plane in Cam Bay, and I see this guy standing there with a black beret. He's got 60 rounds going both ways, and he says, "Who has jump status? Who's got infantry? Who's got ranger? I got ranger. Who wants hazardous duty? I want hazardous duty." So you get paid a little more money for hazardous duty, maybe another $50 a month. But it was the insanity.
Yeah.
See, I wanted you, my friends and people that knew me to know that I was somebody. You know what I mean? I looked for that negative attention my whole life.
Me too.
I got sent to the C Company, the 75th Rangers in Vietnam, which was a tough outfit. When I tell you how tough it was, there weren't any Jewish fellas. It was a tough outfit. Anyway, I went there. The guys, they wore their heads like mohawks. These guys were from like from Kentucky, Mississippi, Louisiana. You know what I mean? Like all these different rebel states.
Yeah.
Tough guys. So I went with this company, and we were traveling. We went from a place called Tui Wa to An Khe. This is like further north. So we went up to An Khe, and he said, "This is where we're going to stay," and then we go out in choppers to the jungle. Okay. So my first ride out in a chopper going to the jungle, my sergeant goes halfway down
The propellant line.
Right, 250 feet. We weren't jumping out of planes. We were rappelling out of helicopters.
Down. Okay.
250 feet out of the helicopter, and he's halfway down, and they're starting to fire him, and I'm just about almost out of there. So I'm like hanging a little bit. He's hanging, and the chopper's taking back off and going back because
They're getting shot.
We're getting shot out. So that was like my first day of my introduction. And, of course, when I got back, and, everybody, it was cool, you know what I mean? I can't tell them how scared shit I was, but it was cool. So
And
anyway,
are you
that's
guys using M16s?
M16s, yeah, made by Mattel.
Okay.
Yeah, M16s. Yeah, we were using M16s. They were pretty light. But in my company, my team, you see, we went out in 6-man recon. One day you were the medic. One day you had the 60. One day
What's
you
the
were
60?
The M60.
Okay.
One day you're walking.
The M60 is the big gun.
big-
Yeah.
One day you're the medic.
Okay.
One day you're walking point.
What's that?
You know, you're the first man. You know, you're walking in front of everybody else.
Wow.
And one day you got the radio.
The radio's a sweet day. Or
I don't know
not
how
really.
sweet it is, but, you know, you got it. I mean, you know, you got the radio, you still got an M16
Okay.
and a whole bunch of grenades and everything. You know, you got all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, when we went from one town to another, they used to hold bags of pure heroin, vials, you know, like paint by number vials.
Uh-huh.
And the guys on the truck are butting them with the rifles and taking the bags. I says, wow, this seems pretty easy. So now I got all the heroin I want.
Wow. What percentage would you say of the people in Vietnam that you were with were doing heroin?
You know, I'm going to tell you.
Was it just like a rebel group that was doing it, or was it like everybody?
You know,
was
there was a
kinda doing
movie called Platoon.
Yeah, I seen it.
Okay. And they had like the alcoholics one place, and then they had the druggies the other place. Well, those druggies were doing more than marijuana in there. You know what I
Okay.
mean? They didn't really show that in the movie at the time.
But they were.
But they were, trust me. So we had that. And I'm going to say it was about 60-40, 65-35, you know. But everything was kept, you know, quiet. They didn't bother you. You know, lieutenants and captain, nobody bothered you over there. Not
Yeah.
like, you know, not like today.
No,
In
yeah.
Vietnam, they didn't bother you. They didn't bother. I had pockets full of this shit.
As long as you showed up and did your job, they didn't care if you were loaded.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't. It's not like they noticed it or
Yeah,
anything.
they were like, whatever.
You know, I mean, you're focused on the enemy, you know, and stuff like that. So I'm there about 4 months, 5 months, in and out, back and forth. You know, I've been in a few firefights here and there, and I'm going to tell you a little story. I wish I brought it with me, because there was a big write-up on it. On February 21st, 1971, I was in an ambush between a stream and a trail. And I want to tell you, it's about 120 in the shade. And I also was on a little good shit, you know. So I nodded in and out, and all of a sudden I hear boom, 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 boom. And we're in a firefight, big firefight. And we were surrounded, 6 of us were surrounded by
Wow.
30 NVA, 6 of us. I got hit right away.
You got shot.
I got what they call a Chi-Com grenade. I got hit in the feet. You know, and the funny thing, I don't know if you want to call this God, luck, whatever, but 5 minutes before I was turned around the other way. And we didn't wear helmets. We just wore bandanas and stuff because
Why?
the helmets make noise.
Okay.
We were in the jungle and we were looking for tunnels. You know what I mean? We were looking for paths. We were looking for the NVA Army. We weren't fighting Viet Cong. We were up north. We were fighting NVA Army.
What's that? Like,
North Vietnamese, they call it hard belts. They were actually North Vietnamese Army, okay? Which those kids are trained from the time they're 4 years old.
Would it be like almost like special forces of them?
Yeah, well, they were trained early on.
Yeah, so they're all pretty much.
Yeah, they were really they were smart. They were smart. This was their war.
Yeah.
They knew how to fight in the jungle. We were learning how to fight in the jungle.
Yeah.
I was a little guy back then, you know. I'd weighed 135, 140 pounds, you know. So I used to go into tunnels. I went into tunnels,
Wow.
you know. Never got down all the way, though, you know, and there was a lot of that stuff going on. I told you I got hit on February 21st, 1971. I was Medevac back to the United States, but I went to a hospital in Da Nang. I went to
What happened in the ambush?
a lot of fire. Oh, thanks for bringing that.
Did all 6 of you survive?
2 of us, yeah, we all 6 survived. 2 of us got hit. Once the thing was going in, I had the radio that day. I was calling in the Cobras. You know what the Cobras are? Well, those are the helicopters that just shoot fire.
Yeah.
And they surrounded us with fire and they cleared them out.
Wow.
Okay. So then I was laying there. My other friend was laying there. Guy used to tease me all the time because I talked loud. And he got hit in the eye. He lost some vision of his eye. And
Wow.
both my feet were blown up. The boots were blown off my feet. So all the guys get on the choppers. The choppers are coming in to get us. There's a lot of dead people. Anyway, so I got on the chopper. They took me back to Da Nang in the hospital. I was in the hospital in Da Nang, and the boys came to see me. You know, my boys that I hang out with, do the drugs, the heroin. And they said, Brad, you're going home? You're going Medevac? I says, so what? He says, no customs. I says, really? No customs? and he gives me a bag of vials.
Mm-hmm.
100. I counted them. 107. I think it was 171, 172 vials of pure heroin.
What do you think that is, like kilo-wise or like gram-wise?
No, this was pure heroin. Vials.
Mm-hmm.
Vials. Let's put it this way. I can use one vial
And get a
about
kilo?
10, 15 times.
Wow.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm good. I don't ever have to worry again. Once too many, 1,000 will never be enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I made it back, and I was in St. Albans. After I went to Da Nang, then I went to Japan, a hospital in Japan. Then I went to a hospital in Okinawa, new hospital in Okinawa, and then I wound up in Alaska for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was Alaska. There was snow on the ground and everything when they brought us out. I was still in a gurney, and then I got home to St. Albans Naval Hospital in New York, and I was there for a while. And I kept using and using. Of course, they're giving me pain medication at the same time, and I'm using and using and using. And I was so messed up, I was hallucinating all over the place. That was in February. I didn't get discharged until July. And I was retired out of the service. But before I was retired out of the service...
So you didn't take the vials to sell. You were just doing them.
Well, I was doing them. I called up a couple of the guys from the neighborhood, I turned this one on.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sell. I didn't want to sell any. I just wanted my,
Your share.
Because if I would have gone off the shit then, I would have been very, very sick.
Mm-hmm.
I got out of the hospital sometime in May, but my mother was getting married again.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want me around, So she sent me to my godfather in Atlanta, Georgia. I think I had still a lot of shit left,
Mm-hmm.
So I went to my stay in Atlanta, Georgia, and eventually I ran out of shit. And in Georgia at that time, there was a place called Piedmont Park. And in Piedmont Park, they don't have it today. You were allowed to drive in and out of the park. They had the Black Panthers there, the junkies there, the acid freaks there, this there, that there, all over the place. And I got really messed up. I think I had a pretty much good drug-induced nervous breakdown, and I was still in the service. I was doing the heroin along with this Mad Dog acid, they called it, and I'm banging it like there's no...
Wow, you're shooting the acid?
I'm shooting this Mad Dog acid cut with heroin.
Wow.
Okay? And I...
Tripping.
I went out. I mean, I was messed up. So my uncle and my aunt there, they got me into the VA hospital there, and I was on the mental ward, I was still limping at the time and so on and so forth, I wasn't healed up. And they put me on that, and they wanted to get me on a methadone program, and they said, but they give me methadone, and I was still sick because I was doing a lot of heroin. So when I got on the methadone, I said, I was still sick. So they had me all the way up to 220 milligrams. And then they brought me down to like 120. And I was on methadone maintenance for a long time. I'd get a job, I'd lose a job. The unmanageability, what I mean? Always wanted to be with the guys hanging out and the drugs and everything, and the women. Women was a big part of it at that time too. So that's what happened there. I came back. They got me back, and I wound up in the VA hospital in Fort Hamilton. And I was so messed up. They were giving me Thorazine, this, that. I mean, I was walking like a mental person, They detoxed me off of the heroin. I stayed on the methadone program, and I wanted to get clean. I really wanted to get clean.
Did you know anyone clean?
No, I didn't know anybody clean. All my friends were either dead, in prison, or never heard from them again. And a lot of them are dead. A lot of them were dead. When we think about it, I was talking with somebody. I met a guy just recently in the rooms who's from my neighborhood, and we were talking about this one, that one, that one. People are dead or doing time for life and everything. It was always a bad scene for me. So one of my childhood school friends that was a good kid, very smart, he went on to be an accountant. He went on to have one of the largest accounting firms in the San Fernando Valley in California.
Wow.
Yeah, he's big. He just retired. He said he was waiting until he was 70. That was last year. So he just retired. We talk all the time. In fact, he came and gave me a recovery medallion.
That's cool.
About a year and a half ago, It was so nice. And anyway, so he says, come on, why don't you do the right thing? Come on, we'll go into Manhattan. We'll go to a disco. I says, okay, we'll do that. Now I'm on a methadone program, I'm
Drinking.
I have a little drink here and there, So I'm at this place called Wednesdays, and I go in there. We get in there, and I get in there and everything. And back in that day, it was 18. It was the
limit.
you can go in at 18. And this little girl comes walking in, She's a brunette. She's got beautiful blue eyes, about 5'2", and they wouldn't let her in. So I give her the eye. She gives me the eye, and I say, she's with me. Mm-hmm. She gets in. Well, I met her in very late September, and I married her in very early October of the same year.
Wow.
Now, that's the disease of addiction called behavior, obsessive-compulsive behavior. And I married her. And at first, I was doing all right. I was on my methadone, drinking a little booze, smoking.
Did she know you were on methadone?
Smoking a little joint, you know what I mean? She got high too,
Yeah, okay.
But I won't say she was an addict.
But she used. Yeah.
But she used, okay. So anyway, I married her. And she said, we need to move out of the city because I don't want you near your friends in the city. I said, okay. So we moved up to Fishkill, New York. I want you to know Fishkill, New York is a sandwich to two of the biggest prisons in New York State. I'd visit my friends. And back in that day, they didn't bother you that much. I'd bring a little something to my friends, I was a nice guy.
Yeah.
I wanted to be loved, and I wanted her to love me. We had a couple of children. I always share this in a meeting. It don't take brains to make children. Anybody could make children, but it takes a real dad to be a father, I wasn't that guy. I was started to get messed up. I started to detox off the methadone because I had a plan. I was going to come down to sunny Florida to be with my abusive dad who moved down here. And I detoxed. I left a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And her, and I came down to sunny Florida in 1979. I was married for 7 years, I was working as a mechanic because I went to school to be an accountant. I wanted to be an accountant. I had to get married right away, so they said to me, well, why don't you go for car repairs? You're always stealing them. I said, okay. So I went to automotive school, Delahanty Automotive in Long Island City, New York, and I was a mechanic. Thought I was anyway. I probably learned more on the job than I did in school, so I became a mechanic. And I really wanted them to come down, my family, and she came down she says, and she never came back. And I was working as a mechanic in Fishkill. I decided that I was going to leave, and I came down to Florida, 1979, New Year's. I want to tell you, I came down here with $89 in my pocket. And my father let me stay with him. And I got a job right away. I was smoking a little pot. I was drinking a little booze. And then I met some people, a girl and a guy. And the guy's doing Dolores. And the girl is a mule, bringing cocaine in. So right away, I'm doing Dolores and cocaine right away. And that started my run in Florida. I always share with people, I says, don't ever let anybody tell you there was any heroin in Florida in the 80s because there wasn't. It was meat tenderizer if there was anything. So Dolores became my thing.
Yeah.
Dolores, and then I mixed it with the Coke. And I shot it, of course. That's what happened. And basically I was in and out. I went to detox several times detox. I'd go to detox. You get to detox and you really want to stop. You really want to stop. I really wanted to stop. And I got to detox and I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to really stop. The first day goes by, still a little sick. They give me something. The second day, I take a little food in my mouth. The third day, I'm sleeping a little better. The fourth day, feeling okay. By the fourth day, I'm saying to myself, when I get out tomorrow, the fifth day, I'm just going to do one more. Now, I heard the message. I heard the message in 1980 when I was hanging around with this guy and the girl. The guy had some friends.
Who were clean.
Who were clean. Me and him were using, but he had some friends who were clean. And a few of these guys are still around. A couple of them died of consequences of the disease, not necessarily OD, but, from illnesses. So I found the program in 1980. So I bounced in and out from 1980 to 1985. I was in and out, in and out, in and out. And finally, I couldn't get no Dolores one night. I couldn't do nothing. I was sick. I couldn't get anything. I was broke. I was homeless. They threw me out of the house I was living in. I lost my job. I didn't have a car. Didn't have no family. I didn't have no friends. I didn't have anything. I walked out of a shooting gallery on May 7th, 1985, and I had a car that I took from the dealership I was working at before they fired me. So I actually stole the car, and I drove down Federal Highway, and I wanted to kill myself, and I put the pedal to the metal, and I never died. And I went back to that house of a friend where I was staying, and I said to him, I said, listen, could you guys give me a chance? And they said, well, if you go to treatment, they'll give you a chance. I says, I'm not going to treatment. Let me tell you what my treatment story is. I just told you. We found a meeting. It was up in Vero Beach, Florida.
Wow, that's cool.
I was sick. I was still sick. I was sick kicking a habit. And I walked into that meeting very sad, very lonely, not feeling too good about myself, my head down. And there was a guy in a wheelchair who was paralyzed from the waist down. His name was Harry B. May he rest in peace. And Harry put his arms around me. He said, welcome.
Wow, in a wheelchair.
In a wheelchair. Harry had 19 months clean, decided to go out and get loaded. And he hit a tree on his Harley Davidson and he never walked again. So he told me his story, and he said, this don't have to happen to you, Brad. So good things happened. The people I was staying with let me come back. The guy I worked for, the owner, was a member of a 12-step program, and they gave me a chance to let me come back to work. So I came back to work. Harry picked me up 8 o'clock every night. There was an 8:30 meeting. He picked me up every night, took me to a meeting. I didn't have a car. I went back to work. I made good money as a mechanic, so they helped me get a car. I got a car. A lot of things came to me easy, maybe too easy, because, my ego, we got ego here.
Yeah.
My ego, when I had a car, I was starting to get some clothes. I was getting some friends. I was starting to know people. I got involved in the 12-step program. A lot of things started to happen. And, when I got involved in recovery, I started to feel like, I wanted to get my children. And I was clean. I was doing good. I went to my first celebration of recovery when I was about 90 days. I had about 90 days, and I went, and it was fun. And I liked the whole recovery scene, So I went there, and it was really nice. And I really enjoyed the people, and I wanted to stay clean. So I got involved in a lot of different things. I got involved in going to jails to help other addicts. I got involved going to treatment centers to help other addicts. I loved my recovery.
How old were you when you got clean?
I was 34.
Wow.
You know how old I am now?
How old?
I'm 71.
Wow. So how many years you got?
By the grace of God, in 33 days, I'll have 37 years.
Wow.
Complete abstinence.
That's amazing.
Yeah. A lot of things happened, and I started participating and doing these steps that they said I needed to do. I always thought about my boys. I could never make contact. I used to write letters to them through Western Union. We didn't have any, no computers back then or no Google back then. So I'd write letters, and they never got the letters. I got a phone call. I was about 7 years in recovery. 7 years, no drugs, no alcohol, living a clean life. And I got a phone call from a young man. And he said, hello. I said, hello. I said, who is this? He said, this is Shane. I says, my son Shane? He said, yeah.
Wow.
My son Shane was going, this is how the God of my misunderstanding works through other people. He was going out with a young lady from Columbia University. And she said, what about your father? And he said, well, I don't know. He's someplace in Florida. She said, you should go find out. And he called me. And I got on the phone. I said,
wow.
Who's this? He says, this is Shane. I said, my son Shane? He said, yeah. I said, really? And I started breaking up. I started crying a little bit. And he said, I want to come see you. So I sent money and everything. He came to see me, and he'll be 48 in July. We've been seeing each other ever since.
That's so cool.
He's got 2 kids, my grandchildren, and I'm in their life from the beginning, right from the beginning, My other son came, and he's been in my life ever since, too, and he's got a daughter. So I have 3 beautiful grandchildren. children
Wow.
that I spend time with. I go up to New York a few times a year. You know, I try to be there, make up for that I wasn't there. You know, because there was a lot of years I wasn't there, and you know that plays a big thing in my heart. And they're good. I'm going up there in 2 weeks. I'm going up there to my youngest grandson's having a communion. We're going up there for that. My life's pretty good. I've had some illnesses in my recovery, you know. In 2009, my back, my neck, everything went out. I had spinal stenosis. I couldn't walk more than 5-10 steps.
Wow. How long did you have to clean at this point?
Well, it was 2009, so I was 24 years.
24 years.
24 years I had that. I had spinal stenosis real bad. I'd walk a half a block. I'd collapse. So I had three big surgeries. Actually, I had 4 big surgeries. Doctors told me it was going to be a long process for healing, but he told me what to do. And I paid attention and I followed direction. Life could be so easy if you follow direction. Later on, I started taking care of myself. The doctor said to me, you need to lose some weight. I says, I'm not even heavy. He says, lose some weight. So I lost weight. I'd walk in an Olympic pool back and forth every day. And little by little, things started to happen for me. I started to walk. And I work out, I go to the gym, I exercise, you know, I try and take care of myself. I eat pretty good. Not perfect, but I eat pretty healthy, you know. So I watch myself today because this is all part of the recovery for me, you know.
For sure.
It's threefold, you know, it's spiritual, physical, emotional, you know. So I like to take care of everything in my life. But I do that today. In 2012, the end of 2012, I'm working out in the gym and I pull my groin. So I go down to the VA. Thank God for the VA. I'm so glad I have the VA. I go down to the VA. They take a CAT scan. They take an MRI. They says, oh, your groin, you just pulled a muscle. Don't worry about it. But you need to go see a urologist. I said, why? He said, well, we see a little lesions in your kidneys. So I went to the urologist, and the urologist told me, he says, listen, I got good news and bad news. I said, really? What's the bad news? He says, the bad news is you got cancer. You got renal carcinoma in each kidney. The good news is we found it in time and we can get it out.
Wow, imagine if that didn't happen.
Because this was the type of thing, this type of cancer that you would never know about until it
was already too far.
Right. So they took it out. I had 2 surgeries, 2 big surgeries. The first surgery was a clusterfuck. And they had me in and out of the hospital because I had one of the arteries in my kidneys collapsed or something. And, you know, they had to do special things and they had to do a lot of other things to me. And I finally got past that. And then they did the other surgery. It came out good. And that took time for recovery also. So today I'm good. You know, I'm healthy. I go get an MRI every 6 months to see what's going on there. I have a little tiny lesion in there, but I said to the doctor, I says, make believe I'm your father and give me the right solution. So he says, let's wait. We'll take an MRI every 6 months. We'll see how things go. So far, we've taken a few, and everything's good. So I'm good. And I think I'm pretty healthy for the most part. You know, you get older, things happen, life moves on. And, you know, I've done a little bit of some traveling over the years and some recovering, and that's been a blessing. I let a few good ones get away. A few good women got away. And then there were a few others that needed to get away. But I made some mistakes, and I make a lot of mistakes. Life's about making mistakes, you know. Life's about learning from your mistakes, you know, from your experience, your strength and hope. And, you know, that's why we're here today, so we can help other people with their experiences, maybe change some behaviors. And I told you about my abusive dad. So about 10 years ago, you know, I came down here where I stayed with my dad from 1980, you know, very little at the beginning. And then we were done. He didn't talk to me because I went back in my using and stuff. And about 10, 15 years ago, we got close and my father got sick. And my 2 brothers didn't want any part of him. And my father called on me to ask him to help him. And I helped my dad. We became very close, very close. He told me, I loved you. I just never knew how to show it, son. He says, I love you very much.
Did people push you to do that, or did you just feel like natural to?
It just came natural. I mean, all the inventories and everything. I wanted peace in my life, and I want peace in my life today with everybody. There might be a few people out there that I don't talk to. I don't want it like that. I'd like to make peace with everybody. I don't have any resentments. I don't want any resentments. I have disappointments, and I'd like to correct them. But I'm a person that tries to live with today with love, acceptance, and forgiveness. Acceptance, love, and forgiveness. That's the way I live my life today. I really do. I have several men in my life that I share that with, and and it's a good thing. The camaraderie I have today with other people is beautiful. So my dad had passed, and I took care of everything for him. He was a veteran. We sent him up to New York to the veterans thing with the service thing and all that, and we buried him. And I had peace when he was 90 years old. I don't know how this guy lived till 90. I told you he smoked with an ashtray that high, and he drank every day from noon to night. So Harry did it, and he was a playing guy, boy. So he did it, and he lived till 90. I used to kid him around like a week to me. He said, next week. He said, shh, don't. He just wanted to make 90.
Yeah.
And he was a big Met fan. I was a Met fan. We talk sports all the time. I like all kinds of sports, so we talk sports all the time. I told you I wanted to be a ball player when I was a kid. That was what I wanted to be, but I chose a tube of glue. Anyway. And my mom, I took care of my mom too. They didn't live together. They were in the same ALF. They didn't know it.
Wow.
They didn't know they were in the same ALF.
Wow.
So I had my mom. My mom started to get dementia, so she was in memory care, and I took care of her right up into the end, and I buried her, and I took care of that. That's the peace, man. I got peace today. I have a lot of cousins, and I got together with cousins and everything, and it's funny, when I was with them, they always told me, Brad, you were the one, we all loved you. I was just like the bad kid. What's funny about my life today? When I came into the program, the 12-step program, I said, if I hit the lottery, I'll be okay. And I would chase money, I would chase this, and what I found out was that what I needed to chase was my insides. And when I got my insides right, everything was okay on the outside. Because, I'd buy jewelry, I'd do this, I'd do that, nice car, that. You know what? Today, I have everything I need and everything I want, and I'm a satisfied customer. I want to live. I want to live. And that's what I want to do. I don't know, there's really nothing else to say. I could say that, the most beautiful thing in the world is when you call up, you FaceTime your grandchildren and you're on the phone with them, and they say, Grandpa, I love you, Grandpa, I miss you, you're coming for my birthday. What could beat that?
Yeah.
So that's all really I got about. I think I covered everything. I'll probably get in my car and the battlefield between my ears will say, Brad, you left that out. You left that out. But
I try to ask everyone this. You've been clean a long time. What do you think is like something that you see that is a determining factor of people staying clean versus going back out?
Well, I think that when people are here for a while and they see the beautiful things that could be accumulated, okay, friends, not being hungry, being able to eat and be able to socialize and being able to have your self-esteem back, who wants to lose that? I don't want to lose that. When I came in, my head was down, and I didn't feel too good about myself. I was alone. Today, I'm not alone. Today, I talked to 15 people before noon.
Yeah.
I try to go to a lot of different places and share a lot of different things with a lot of people today, because if I was out there today, I'd be dead. There's no doubt in my mind. No doubt. People are dying every day. You probably see it more than me because, where you're at, I'll just keep coming.
Hey, thank you so much.
The first one.
I appreciate you, Brad. Love you. Your story is amazing.
Thanks.
This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 833-999-1877 to speak to a specialist. The show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com.